Good afternoon, everyone. We're starting the session number 6, which is Histories and Stories. Welcome for those of you here. And I'm pleased to introduce Joanna and Rachel Ratner, who are going to do their presentation on the Seattle band map, mapping the evolution of Seattle artistic relationships.
Thanks very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Just to give you a bit of a feel for how things are going to run, I'm going to do the introduction and give you a little bit of background on why this paper exists. And then my colleague Rachel, who flew in from Seattle on Sunday, is going to give you the context and the background of the work that she did, and then we're going to talk a little bit between the two of us about where we'd like to go from here. Before I tell you a little bit about my credentials and why I'm interested, I'd just like to get a feel from the audience. Can I just find out if anyone in here is a musician at all? Hands up. Yay. Okay, we've got 3 or 4 people who might just get what I'm getting at. Thank you. I currently work in the business school, which is that shiny new building right opposite St James's Park, which we're busy now trying to pay for. Which is one of the reasons that I haven't been around much over the course of the conference. I'm going to set this slide isn't moving, John. Come on. It's not happening. Thank you. The space bar. So this is me. My background is mostly in business. I was born and brought up in Hartlepool in the northeast of England. I left for obvious reasons for anyone who knows what Hartlepool's like, and eventually came back like an awful lot of sort of almost Geordie people do. Did my MBA at the university, did my PhD looking at new music industry business models, technologically-mediated music industry business models, and ran a record label as part of that. And my research interests are sort of at all in any of the interfaces between business, creativity, and technology. And this is where I bumped into Rachel and the work that she'd done. The background to the research that I've been involved in is wide and various. I've been involved tangentially in the SIDE project, which is partially responsible for today's symposium. I've done ESRC research into sustainable business models in the creative industries, particularly in this region. We work with Nesta looking at embedding MBA students into regional creative industries to try to do a sort of mini knowledge transfer process, and so on and so forth. So I'm trying to translate my research interests into both teaching and further research. So Seattle Band Map came about from initially an article that I read in Wired magazine, which had interviewed Rachel and a couple of their colleagues. And I don't know how many of you have been down to the exhibition and seen the actual factual map up on the wall. Has anyone seen the band map? It's cool, isn't it? It's very cool. I thought it was, and I read this piece about the back of an envelope, 6 degrees of separation evening in a pub conversation that had turned into a piece of artwork, that had turned into a website, that had created an entirely new cultural representation of a cityscape, and I thought that that was a really interesting place to start to dig a little bit deeper. So that's where the concept, the project came from, and Rachel will tell you a little bit more about it. From my own perspective as a researcher, I think there's huge potential for geographic dissemination, and Rachel's meeting with the guys at Generator, for those of you who know them, tomorrow to see whether maybe we can do a Seattle band map in and around Newcastle and the region. I think that there is room for development of this process, this process of mapping the cultural life of a city through a technological medium like this, through into other industries that are related, like games. And like the movie industry, there's lots and lots of touch points where I think something that is currently almost 2-dimensional could be made 3-dimensional, and that interests me immensely. So we'll talk to the Codeworks guys and we'll talk to a few others to see what we can do. The theoretical underpinning for the work that I'm writing at the moment is sort of goes back to Granovetter, strength of weak ties. Does anybody not know strength of weak ties and that sort of work? Stick your hand up. Ignorance is bliss. Yeah, okay. Basic principle being that people that you know are completely uninformative because you know them. People that you don't know and people that you know that know people that know people that know people are really interesting because they can tell you stuff. That's really what it boils down to. There's a little bit more to it than that. And I think that there's room for not just strong ties, people you know, weak ties, which are people that know people that know people that you know, but virtual ties, which can inspire completely new relationships that might otherwise not happen. If you don't know what you don't know, nothing happens. So what I'd like to do now is hand over to Rachel, having given you a sort of snapshot of what we'd like to talk about today. And Rachel's going to take you through a little bit more of the detail about BandMap and the BandMap creators.
Thank you. So hi, I am Rachel Ratner. I do a few things in Seattle, Washington, where I'm from. I've worked at an independent radio station there for a while. I also got a degree in social work at the University of Washington. And I spent a lot of time working in record stores, with record labels, and as a musician myself. Seattle is a very creative city. There's tons of music, lots of art, lots going on all the time. So it's a kind of a fun city to be a part of. And the other person that started this project with me isn't here because his band is on tour in the United States, and his name is Keith Whiteman. He did the kind of art side of it. So it's interesting because it started out as kind of a fun mental project. I play music, a lot of my friends play music, so our social scene is around music, and I kind of noticed that we were all not only participating in the same scene, but in multiple bands with each other. So I thought it was kind of neat to see how that relationship existed, but what it turned into was kind of a mapping of human collaborative relationships, which I found extends beyond music to pretty much anything from scientists to people who are in the chef industry to, as you were saying, games and movies. Any kind of series of human relationships is going to have these kind of networks. So it started with me just kind of sketching out on legal paper, oh, like here's my band, which is called Part Man and Part Horse, which is up there in the middle. And then I was like, oh, well, the singer in my band's also in this other band, so I connected that. And oh, the bass player in that band is also in this other band. And so I came up with maybe the 30 bands here that are kind of my immediate circle of friends in the bands that they're in. So showing it around to everybody, like, oh, this is pretty neat. And then a friend who booked at a club was like, oh, you forgot this one. And then a friend who was at the radio station was like, oh, you forgot this one. So people kind of kept adding things onto it. And then I started getting, like, for about a month, these strings of emails with like hundreds, like, well, I remember in 1990, like so-and-so was in this band with so-and-so. And so I started saving all these emails, and I was like, well, I guess I'll keep adding on to it. So I kept adding on to it and adding on to it, and I showed it to my friend and bandmate Keith Whiteman, who does posters. He screen prints posters for bands, and so he's like, well, I'll redraw it, but this is way too small. I'll redraw it really, really big, because that's easier to see. So he redrew it like 8 feet by 8 feet tall. So we decided to be fun to showcase it at a local art gallery. So we did, and we invited people to come add their own connections, since we're by no means experts on the music scene. So we invited a bunch of folks down, and in the course of a weekend, maybe like 600 new bands were added. So it was really exciting. People were super into it. And it became a big mess, which is kind of hard to see now because of how big it was. But and for that, we just had printed out like a bunch of paper on a copy machine and taped them all together and taped them on the wall. So we ended up getting a grant from the city of Seattle, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs and the Mayor's Office of Film and Music, to reprint it on durable vinyl, which is what, if you went to the exhibition hall last night, you saw. So we reprinted it. And there's a bunch of musical festivals throughout Seattle, so that grant helped us kind of take it around to different festivals so we could get a better representation of different genres. And we did that throughout last year. And we had more and more folks add on to it. So at first it was just kind of the like arty punk scene that maybe I was a part of, but by the end it was everything from the hip hop scene to like the kind of famous grunge stuff in the 90s to the jazz of the 70s, and it kind of spanned genres and generations. And now it's in a music museum called the EMP, where it rested because we kind of ran out of space to add stuff to it. We kept adding so many things that it became full and hard to read. So the next step was like, well, the internet's pretty big. We can probably make a website. But I don't know much about how to do that. So we just sent an email to the University of Washington Computer Science Department, like, do you have anyone that would like to intern on this project? And we found this great intern by the name of Golf, and we kind of were like, well, we're trying to make it just like this real map, but on the internet. We want people to come see it. We want people to be able to add connections, make changes, edit it, so kind of an open source version of the map that can continue to grow. And that's what we did. So we created SeattleBandMap.com, launched it in February, and there was probably about 2,000 bands on it then. There's over 4,000, probably almost 5,000 on it now, and it keeps growing every day. So that's pretty exciting. And so you can go, you can zoom in, you can search through different bands, find out their connections, and we've got a blog that goes along with it where we go more in depth and tell stories about the bands and the actual human connections that are connecting the musicians, because that's really what's at the heart of it, is that someone in a band collaborates with someone else, shares their musical influences, learns new things about styles of writing music, and then goes on to share that with someone else that they play music with. So that's kind of the general overview of the map to where it is now.